Sorry about that. I got caught up on I was talking to an employee and I just blanked. So sorry.
No worries, no worries. I get it. I've been swamped with work all day, so I've still been able to get some stuff done. So it's not been too bad. Let me see if my
Okay,
husband's coming upstairs.
sure. Let me close the store real quick.
Sure.
Um, we put it on our website and it's on the form and everything, but we've begun recording all our consultations and training sessions.
Sure.
We put it up. It helps people know that we're still operating and just as educational, if you will.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Awesome. So go ahead and fill me in.
All right. So my dog Audrey, she is wonderful. We adopted her about 6 years ago now. She's almost 8 years old. And she's got a little bit of brain damage. So one of the things we struggle with for her is like being able to get her attention and keep it. She gets very dog aggressive. Like we have another dog in my house and like 98% of the time they are just fine together. They play a little rough for my liking. It has led to maybe like we've had them together now for 6 years. We adopted Audrey after we adopted Jameson. And so I think there have been like 3 relatively big fights over the last 6 years. One that ended up with Jameson having to go to an emergency vet to get treated. She, got him pretty good a couple of times. And the other 2 times, my husband and I, we were able to break them apart without anything happening to either of the dogs. So, and I'm currently 6 months pregnant. So I wanted to start working with her. It's like I'm hoping, it's like she's a really good girl and she's great with humans. She's pretty good with kids. I have a couple of nieces and nephews that are younger, but she's never been around like babies
Sure.
at all. And we don't give her any kind of medication at all. My theory is if the vet thought that it would help, that they would have recommended it, because we've been taking her to the same one for the last 6 years. So we think if they thought it was going to help with her attention and anything, that they would have given it to us. But she gets very riled up by small dogs and anybody that walks by the house basically.
What's her breed?
She's a pit bull.
She's pitty. Okay. So 8-year-old pitty. And the brain damage, could you go over that again for me?
Yeah, so Audrey, I'm not too sure like what the exact circumstances of it are, but we were told that before she gave birth to 8 puppies, 6 were live, 2 were dead. But before she gave birth, she had a seizure. And so her brain was deprived of oxygen for a good amount of time. And so we think that had some long-term, we think it's had some long-term effects on her. It's like you can see, like when you look at her eyes tick back and forth very fast.
So like, let's say she's laying down calmly on the couch.
Yep.
And you look at her eyes, you're seeing that movement.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would credit to the brain damage that you see?
Can you give me some examples of like other things that might be, just because like it's hard for me to think of like what might be, it's like I've never had a dog with brain damage before, even as like a young child. So I'm really not sure like what else might be credited to that.
Right. So, because that's what I'm trying to decipher, because the stuff that you're telling me, aside from the eye thing, seems isn't out the ordinary.
Okay.
Okay. When dogs roughhouse and it escalates into a fight, I liken it to like when I was in high school, there was a game called Slaps.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and then somebody would slap someone too hard. Next thing you know, you had a fight.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but it started as a game.
Yeah.
And dogs are very much the same way, especially pitties, because you know, I love pitties, and I don't want this to seem like I'm talking about them in a negative light. But pitties are known for either overstimulation issues, dog reactivity issues, or dog aggression issues, because that was kind of just bred into them.
Okay.
I always tell people, you know, from experience, and I get a lot of pit bulls, I guess, because people on my website, I have pictures of me and a couple of pit bulls. I guess people just see me as the pit bull guy. But an aggressive pit bull and an aggressive German Shepherd are two totally different animals.
Okay.
Okay, and that's because of the breed.
Okay.
And in my, whether, like, let's say I have a pit bull who's anxious and a pit bull who's aggressive, right? That intensity that was bred into pit bulls kind of fuels those behaviors, whether it be anxiety, fear, nervousness, or aggression, you know.
Okay.
So they're definitely, I don't want to say they can't be helped, but I have a pity myself. But that's something that I would kind of agree with when I hear trainers talk about certain things.
Yeah.
Because I'm not one to really put things on breeds.
Sure.
You know, like they'll say like, oh, like that breed's known to be territorial. I'm like, every single dog can be territorial.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean?
You know what? Actually, my husband's just downstairs in the basement and not responding to any of my messages. Let me go grab him really quickly. I'll be right back.
Yeah, by all means, go ahead.
Sorry about that. He'll be in just 1 second.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
I'm trying to think of like other. So I mean, there's the eye thing. Also, like she's always had like a tick like with her ear where she's constantly like scratching at it. We've asked the vet and they have never actually like been able to find that it's an infection.
Sure.
They have given us medication. This is my husband, Mike.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
They've given us like some medication for her, but it never really seems to help.
What's the?
Do you know what the stuff is that they gave us for her ear?
For an ear infection, essentially. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like treating it as if it's an infection as opposed to it being neurological.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like we like they suggested like it might even be like a food allergy, so we switched their dog food recently from Blue Buffalo, the chicken formula, to the lamb. They suggested that.
Sure.
And that, I mean, it's like she definitely likes the lamb more. She actually is like all over the food bucket like the second I open it, whereas with the chicken she wasn't, but still is going after that ear like it's nobody's business.
And when I'm assuming they've looked at the ear, right?
Yep.
Like examined it, and they can't, like, they don't see anything. Like
there's nothing chronic that they've said that they've had at this point. They believe it's just that she produces a lot of earwax, essentially. So
okay.
So she keeps at it because she's sensitive about her ears. Period. Either one of them, if you touch them, but her right ear specifically seems like it bothers her the most. And then they had a weird habit essentially before where Jameson, our other dog, would go up and like lick her in the ears, and we didn't realize how bad that was for her. So we've gotten to a position here where we're reinforcing with him every time he does that to not let that happen. But it still happens when we're not really, you know, yeah. So yeah, we're trying to break him to the habit, and he's much better at it, but they still do it. So
Okay. And then behaviorally, what are you trying to address here?
So one of the biggest things or biggest concerns we have with her is that if something else gathers her attention, she becomes almost impossible to give instruction to. So like, and it's especially bad when it comes to other dogs. So like, where we live in Chicago, if she catches sight of a dog walking down the street, for example, she has to start barking at it to the point where it doesn't matter if I tell her to stop or stay calm or anything like that. She will immediately like almost torpedo herself, basically at all costs to get to the window to see this other dog. And yeah, so her not being able to focus on something specific or focus on a command when there's outside stimulus, that's the biggest thing that we're worried about.
Okay. Anything else?
No, not really. I mean, she listens. She's really, I don't know, obviously with like fireworks and stuff like that, she gets
storms. She's terrified. Won't go outside to pee during the rain. But that, I mean, is not like a huge concern.
Right.
Because like, you know, like the rescue that we got her from, they found her, you know, like walking around pregnant on the street. So it's like, God knows how many storms, you know, she had to deal with by herself. So it's mostly just the attention span. And I told him about the eyes with the possible brain damage.
Okay. Yeah, she was a chick, basically. So.
Okay. And then you have 2 dogs, correct?
Yep.
And then what's the other dog?
Like a hound mix, not really sure, honestly.
How old?
They're both going to be 8. So yeah, he's almost 8. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're only separated about a month.
And anything with the hound at all?
He doesn't have he plays too rough. He always has. He actually got kicked out of doggy daycare from PetSmart 6 years ago. Maybe longer.
Okay.
Like they wouldn't let him in the all-day play anymore, but the one we were going to was mostly small dogs. I would say he has a little bit of dog aggression, but nothing in the realm of what we experienced with Audrey. Not even close.
Whenever he deals with other dogs, he goes into he does a full play bow.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell obviously that he's trying to play, but he just treats every dog, no matter its size, like they're like they want to wrestle. Yep. So that's his one thing.
That's his play style.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's with her, it's not a big deal. She's the same size, but if he were to catch her, like I don't know, if he were to hurt her or touch her ears accidentally, she'll snap back, and then they could get into a fight as a result. So that has happened in the past.
Right. The 3 big fights is what I have noted here over 6 years, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, but there's been others, just not as bad.
I mean, like I don't even know that I would like little like I don't know.
They get to the point where they'll bare teeth at each other or something like that, and usually we're on top of that to separate them. But
when that happens, what's going on? Is there a resource involved, like a toy or a bone?
One of the big and major fights they had, or actually 2 of the fights that they had, were over toys. So we don't
keep toys with them anymore because of it.
Yeah, we're kind of a toyless house with the dogs now. So.
What about the 3rd one?
Let me see.
Was that the food at Thanksgiving that kind of started a little bit?
It could have been food. I think that was food.
I think, yeah, that one, we had food on the counter for Thanksgiving. But before that, like, I just like reached in and yanked by the collar straight up and got Audrey before she even was on him, honestly, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scary.
And the little. Sorry?
We feed them separate. We have their bowls like 10 feet apart. So.
Okay.
We give them treats. It's usually 5 feet apart, something like that.
When you've seen those instances where they bare teeth at each other and you're able to stop it, is it same thing over food or some kind of resource or?
That it depends. Sometimes if they get if they're playing each other and they get too rough, it turns into you can't tell if they're still playing or if they're starting to get aggressive. So
sure.
We proactively will separate them.
Yeah. because of the previous fights, my anxiety over it is incredibly high. So like even just a little bit of it, and I'm like, oh my God, like please just like get them like away from each other.
For sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
they usually give each other signals, so it's usually not too bad. But the major times that they've fought, usually they've escalated extremely fast. That was really what happened. So.
Right.
Okay. So from what you're telling me here, I wouldn't credit any of the stuff to the brain damage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Behaviorally.
Yeah.
Okay. The tick thing of the eye movement,
Mm-hmm.
the ear tick thing. I don't think it's allergies because, or ear infections because it's pretty evident. Like, oh, there's an infection. Let's treat it. You know, in terms of my experience with it, I have another trainer who I can put you in contact with, and she might be able to have some insight if it is diet related. But you know, other than that, then I would think maybe it's possibly tied to the brain damage as well. Okay. The fixation on things is super common.
Yeah.
Okay? Especially with pitties, it's super common. So I don't believe that has anything to do with brain damage. It's just there's nothing to get that there's. Have you guys done like food-based training or have you done anything?
Nothing official, but typically when we do food, we try to do commands and stuff like that. So with him, we did a full training
with PetSmart.
training class with PetSmart. With her, we didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the only training you've ever done?
Yes.
Okay. So I used to be a trainer for PetSmart, and it's a joke. Okay.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So
we only did it for the discount on stuff, I think, or for the.
It was required as part of the adoption, essentially, that we sign up or sign him up for training.
Yeah, that's all business stuff. It's whatever.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, all this other stuff, for me, it just seems like an overstimulated pity. The fights over toys and food is resource guarding, which is a context. The positive front of this is that we know if we keep toys and food put away, is we can avoid a fight.
Yeah.
The playing escalating and you guys capping it is very healthy. Okay. So like at my daycare, when you mentioned like the hound, he got kicked out of play, whatever, 6 years ago. It's super common because they want the easy dogs. They want the dogs they can put 30 of them in a room with one person and not worry about it.
100%.
Because they're just making tons of money, right? In my place, we do small groups, 6 to 8 dogs to one handler.
Okay.
And we always control the level of play because we don't want a fight to break out. Okay. So it's healthy that you as dog owners don't allow it to get that far. And, you know, if you're seeing it get close to that, you can always cap it even lower. You know, like it's your house, your rules. And if you get to a point where like, I feel uncomfortable, just stop it.
Okay? Yeah, my threshold for it is pretty low. So. Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. I understand the background behind it. But at the end of the day, you know, you pay for the food, you pay for the vet bills, you put a roof over their head, you pay for the rent. What do they contribute?
Right.
Right. So, you know, it's like me growing up, my mom was super strict and I could play in the house to a degree, but then if it got too much, she'd say, take it outside. You know? And so for dogs, I tell people it's healthy to have rules in the home where, like for me personally, my rules are you don't play in the house. When I take you outside to the field or to the dog park, whatever, then you can go do your doggy thing. And then when we come back home, it's calmness. Right. But that's why I don't have dogs that fight within the home. You know, and you're talking to someone, when I lived with my stepdad, we had 9 dogs in a home.
Wow.
Yeah, because he had 6 and I had 3. Wow. And, you know, there was tension between my pit bull and his Doberman, but they never escalated it because we always addressed them. And we never let things escalate further than like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, than a 2 to a 3.
Okay.
You know, and that's how harmony is created. So, yeah, so that's perfectly fine. You know, if you have a low threshold for what they can do within the home or just period, because you're just saving yourself the heartache of a potential fight or a very expensive vet bill for 2 dogs, right? So that's fine. the dog reactivity stuff. So you said 6 months pregnant, correct?
Yes.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming you're wanting to get, and you said haven't been exposed to babies or children, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something you're trying to do, is get exposure, or are you trying to get a structure down so that when the baby comes into play, like you already have a foundation that you can kind of how do you say, be more relaxed that now we're bringing a baby home to two dogs that have never been around a baby?
We're trying to get the structure down because it's like, since I'm already 6 months, like we understand that the training is going to end up going like for, like once the baby comes to kind of help build on that like foundation we're trying to get now, but it's to try and curb some of these, like, like the reactivities and be able to get the attention and, command like the house with the two of them, with the baby in the house.
Okay. Do you have any concerns with dog-baby interaction?
Not with Jameson in any way. Like he's very gentle with kids, always has been. Audrey, she has played like.
She's grabbed her like handcuffs before of like kids, so.
But like never tried to like hurt them or anything like that, but she's playing with them, so she grabs their pants to like pull them back. And
sure,
yeah.
Sure. So she just doesn't have a boundary with kids.
Right.
Okay. So, if with what your life is, right? Mm-hmm. And if you could have what you wanted with your dogs, what would that look like?
Honestly, for me personally, just more structure. Like I used to sleep in bed with both dogs, no problem, not scared at all. But like the last fight that happened in November was because they were arguing over a spot in bed with my husband. And I found him like cradled like over like one of the dogs I think he was protecting Jameson from her. And now like I'm so anxious over sleeping with the both of them in bed with me that I can't. And like I find myself like up for hours, like very anxious about it, like can't fall asleep at all. So
okay.
I would, it's like, and I think that having the structure and like more command over her would help me with that, knowing that I could get her attention and keep it in a situation if I needed to. Like not launching herself at the, I'm talking like she'll launch herself 6 feet across a couch to like get to her spot at the window to go bark at a dog or somebody walking by.
Have you ever had an incident there where like both dogs went to the window to bark?
Yes, he will back off because he's afraid of her when she gets that crazy, and he'll come run by me. I'm more concerned because he'll be sitting in that corner, and she'll launch herself and almost like knock him out.
He's launched himself directly at my face before.
Yeah.
Very intense.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
To say the least.
So, this isn't out the ordinary stuff. Like I work with this stuff on a regular basis. The only thing would be maybe the brain damage affects how she responds.
Okay.
And I'll delve more into that. But before reaching out, I'm assuming you guys have done research on my approaches and just me in general.
I did, yes.
Okay. So, I specialize in e-collar. It's my go-to tool. Whereas for most trainers, it's the last resort.
Okay.
Okay. The reason why it's my go-to tool is because, especially now due to COVID, I'm able to train dogs without even touching the dog.
Okay.
It removes a lot of technical skill. We don't have to worry about timing. When we deal with dogs with reactivity issues, in most cases, we don't have to worry about, are we going to have the ability to stop the reactivity? Okay. So are you guys familiar with like prong collars, the spiky looking ones?
Oh yeah, we don't use those at all.
Okay. So prong collars are perfectly safe to use. So if we look at it as food, prong, and e-collar, if you try to use food to get her attention outside when she's fixated, chances are it's not going to happen, right?
Right. We've tried that.
If you use a prong collar, and I have actually a handful of clients right now that their dogs were on prong collar, but they struggled with reactivity because they didn't have enough intensity with their corrections to snap the dog out of the reactivity.
Okay.
So if the dog's at a 20, you have to be at a 20 or higher. But if the most you can do is a 10, you'll never get breakthrough. Okay. E-collar allows me the ability to break through without worrying about how strong is the owner, how good is their technical skill when it comes to correcting with the leash. You know, everything's at the press of a button.
Okay.
And the way we would approach a case like this is I teach her how to walk my style, which is if I take one step, she takes one step, I take 5 steps, she takes 5 steps. When I stop, she automatically sits. This is with no tension, a completely slack leash, and I don't care what the environment is. I don't care if there's dogs, people, skateboarders, rollerbladers, bikers going around. I want that level of attention.
Okay.
The theory is if we get that level of attention, we shouldn't even see the reactivity because she's so focused on the handler. Okay. If we do see reactivity, you know, because there's a spectrum in terms of severity and all that stuff, I look at like, what does it fix and what's left to fix? So if we did class 1 and I come back class 2 and I'm like, how'd it go? You're like, Jesse, you know, it's great. Like 60% of her reactivity is gone. We're just struggling with this last 40%. And I go, great, that's a lot of progress. And I go, you know, what are you struggling with? What are the contexts? And then you tell me like, well, a dog barked at her, so that she barked back, and then they couldn't get her under control. And I go, oh, that makes sense because that dog put out threat. You know, so she's going into self-defense mode. So then we make a few tweaks, you know, come back class 3, how to go, Jesse, even better. Now we're like 80% done. I'm like, awesome. Let's make a few more tweaks, right? And we just keep adjusting. And then it's really play it by ear in terms of the behavior stuff. If it wasn't for the behavior and you're like, we just need the dog to do this and do this and do this, it's easy. Because it's just teaching the dog to do, like, you know, sits and then to walk on a leash and to come when I call you. You know, it's technical skills, so to speak, and not so much change how you behave when you see certain things. Okay. Now, with multi-dog homes, it's easier if you do both dogs, and it's not that much more expensive. Okay. The reason why I say that is if she sees Jameson getting less structure than her,
yeah, she's gonna get jealous.
She's not jealous, she's gonna push more. Like dogs don't have the, in my opinion, like the jealousy like a human does.
Okay.
But if she's like, let's say she's in a tight heel and Jameson is allowed to walk loosely, she's gonna forge going like, well, if he can walk like that, why can't I walk like that? Right. So it's easiest if both dogs are on the same page.
Okay.
And all it would require is that you buy the appropriate collar for the dogs. And typically when I work with 2 dogs or more within a home, it's typically the first 2 classes, you just extend it half an hour. And then everything else is stupid simple. Okay. So you'll probably pay maybe a couple $100 more to work with the dogs. You're not paying a program for one dog, a program for another dog.
Okay.
Okay. Because then you also want to think when the baby comes into play, how would you say, you want to not have to worry about them, period. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because, you know, you're going to be there's going to be sleepless nights, you know, there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of change in the environment within the home because they've been around babies outside of the home for a temporary time.
Yeah.
But now this baby's going to be permanent, you know, so there's going to be a big shift there. And I'll go over pricing and all that stuff with you. It's not, you don't have to, it's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of control, how much control would you like to have?
I don't really know how to answer that question, honestly.
So like the perfect example is like when we take them for walks,
Okay.
they both pull. Their collars or their leashes are relatively tight. With her, she catches the wind of another dog, she goes a little nuts.
Sure.
Like I like the idea that like my wife could walk both dogs by herself and not have to worry about it because she doesn't have to worry about the dogs pulling on her. I don't know if I need to get to the point where like they won't move if we won't move. I mean, if that's the training program, that's the training program. But
Right.
I don't know how docile I guess I would want them to be. So
when your biggest thing is the behavior.
Yes.
Okay. And I get cases where I come in and it's literally one class and then it's 180 and it's super easy. And I get other classes or clients where it's like they need to have absolute control, right? And I don't have a problem with you guys starting with a shorter program and seeing what you achieve, and then you can always extend it. Realistically speaking, and just from previous experience with families that have had, children that I've worked with, and then they have multi-dogs and stuff, is there's three things that I care about. Okay, in your case, it's the leash walking because that's your foundation for the reactivity.
Yeah.
Recall, which is come when called in case they get off leash. And three would be stationary control, which would be, go to that bed and don't move for the next 3 hours while I handle the baby. Okay, that's it. Just three basic, simple commands that give you walk with me, don't pull me, come to me when I call you, and don't move for a period of time when I need you to. Okay. In terms of length of time, you'd be in a 6 to 9 week class range. Okay. I would predict 2 classes for leash walking, which would be the longest classes. Those are the 2 that you want to extend half an hour because it allows 45 minutes for each dog.
Okay.
And then after that, the exercises are relatively simple. And then once you understand it, it's pretty easy just to be able to work with each dog half an hour, and then you do your homework. Okay. So I would predict 2 classes for leash walking, 2 classes for recall, and recall tends to take the longest for people because it requires you to go somewhere with the long leash to let your dogs roam around and then practice calling them back. Okay. And then 2 for duration work, which would be go lay in your bed and don't move for a period of time. Or 1 actually, it's really 1 class. It's easy to teach. It's practicing. And then a 6th class is kind of like the variable of the reactivity stuff. Okay. We've also added in 2 Zoom sessions to all our programs. So you're technically getting 8 hours of work with me, but 2 are over the internet. And we would use those Zoom sessions for like the stuff inside the home, correcting them for like the little spats, like correcting the barking out the window, the things that you don't like, capping them when it comes to play, things like that. We can do over the Zoom because that's really just information. Once you have the tools, then it's just, okay, how do I use these tools to create what I'm wanting?
Yeah.
Okay. The only reason I would say you might be in the 9-week realm is the reactivity stuff.
Yeah.
Because again, that's the variable. Okay. And when it comes to addressing reactivity, to give you a realistic expectation, the minimum I would expect for you to be able to do is if she became reactive, you have the ability to stop it. Okay. The goal is that we don't even see reactivity.
Okay.
Okay. But it would require you to have your dogs under control. So you can't have, how would you say, dogs that have a lot of freedom and that are also well-behaved dogs in the sense of, aggressive type behaviors or reactivity. Because that's part of the problem is there's no structure. So there's nothing that says like, hey, that you can't go that far. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you're going to create robots, but you're going to create disciplined dogs that when you need the control, you're going to have it. And then when they're on their free time, then they're on their free time.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in the 6 to 9 week realm in terms of length of time. In terms of cost, the 6-week program is $825. And Maria will reiterate all this stuff to you. She'll send you the prices online or email. To extend half an hour, it's just $35 per session. So if you're doing 2 sessions, it's $70 on top of $825, so $895.
Okay.
The 9-week is $1175 without the extension. And then if you're going to train only one dog, the collar that I recommend for, is it Audrey?
Audrey, yeah.
Is they actually discontinued it a few months back. And you can still find them online. It's the highest powered collar. And the only reason I'm suggesting it is so that you have it just in case you need it, because it would really suck if you went with a lower powered collar, it doesn't work, and then you try to get the higher powered collar, but now you can't find it anywhere. Okay. And it's because she's a pitty. Pitties, when they get to that state, it can be difficult to get them to snap out of it, and you want the power to be able to cut through. Okay. And I have videos on my YouTube channel, and there's one in particular that I recommend you watch because that dog is very similar to what you described with Audrey here. So you get a visual of what I'm talking about. Okay. That collar by itself, a 1-dog system, is about $352 attacks. Okay. It's pricey, but they last for years. I've had mine for 8 years, no issues. The most common thing is the battery. It's a rechargeable lithium battery, so they do wear out. But it's like a $20, go online, buy a new one for $20, replace it, and you're good to go. Okay. Fully waterproof system, 1 mile range, highest power collar there is. I don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have enough juice to cut any behavior. Okay. If you decide to train both dogs, I believe the 2-dog system of that particular collar is around $500. Okay. So that's where like a big chunk of the investment is in the equipment. And then, but once you have it, like I said, you're pretty much set. Questions so far?
So I've never seen like an electronic collar like in action before.
Sure.
Like, so I think that my only concern, I don't know about like my only, I just like it's how much does it like hurt them? Like it's like I've literally never seen or felt one in any way, shape, or form because like if she does have a little bit of brain damage, I don't know how she would react to that. I mean, it's like I don't know, like her ears are so sensitive, like is it gonna bother her so much that it almost makes the situation worse because it's so intense for her ear? Like
in my career, I've only worked with one other dog that had neurological damage.
Okay.
And I put quotes because for me, I look at it, I'm like, I see dogs that have this exact problem that don't have neurological issues. And it was like a Katrina, ex-Katrina dog, So, and their case was completely different than yours. This was a dog that was aggressive to the owners. Okay. And I've used e-collars on dogs that have had heart murmurs, blind, deaf, have had seizures, and no issues. And to describe it to you in terms of what it is, have you guys ever been to a chiropractor or a physical therapist?
Yes.
Have you ever had stim?
Yeah.
That's e-collar.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a muscle contraction.
Okay. So like so I actually have one of those little machines at home because to help with like physical, like my own physical therapy crap.
Right.
How far, like how high up on like the scale of those things would you say that the collar goes?
So I'm not sure how the human ones work in terms of scale of power.
Okay.
But the collar that I use has 127 levels.
Okay.
And it starts obviously from very low to very strong.
Okay.
So your device, how high, what's the number, the numerical power?
I think it goes up to 30.
Okay, so imagine 30 is 127,
Okay.
but I have 97 more breaks than your machine.
Okay.
You see, so
Yeah.
like yours is going to have greater jumps in terms of contraction
Yeah.
because it's 30. Okay, so like in e-collar, there's brands that have only 8 levels of stimulation.
Okay.
8 and 127 are the same, so you can imagine how big those
Those
jumps
jumps.
are.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my opinion, the e-collar is more refined than a human TENS unit because with the human TENS units, like they have to be mindful if you have a pacemaker.
Yes.
There's still risk of electrocution if there's like water around, and there's also risk of electrical burn.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get that with e-collar.
Why not?
It's not so much how do you say? So there's 2 probes that make contact, and the
Yeah.
current is at that point of contact, nowhere else.
Okay.
Okay? And they're built to be waterproof. They're
Okay.
meant for hunting dogs.
Okay.
Okay. I've never seen a dog get electrocuted by one. I've been using for 10 years. If you go online and you see like these people that bought like an e-collar and it looks like it burned the dog's skin, they most likely bought a very cheap $30 e-collar on the internet, which is why my e-collars don't cost $30. They cost $352,
Okay.
right? I've been using them for 10 years. My mentor's been using them, God, like 20 years. And he came out, he started training when they were like really crappy, you know, and he still uses them. And it's what I built my career on, which is because it's so easy and simple to use. It's just the notion that people have about them that that's the problem, which is why we started recording our sessions. One, because of COVID, we wanted to show people that I don't have to touch the dog to train them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do it through strictly verbal instruction and get reliable obedience.
Yeah.
Right. But also I've done it so that I go, if I have someone who has, their hesitancies on it, I'm like, just watch this video.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it and if you're uncomfortable with it for whatever reason, fine. Like it's full transparency. Right.
Yeah.
And Mac is not an easy dog. Mac, he was very stubborn and tough and resilient. His number out of the collar, we went as high as 85 on the first session. But now his number is like 45, and I just bumped him to 65 because they're struggling with a little bit of reactivity, but that's different.
Okay.
Obedience-wise, 45, he's awesome. Behavior-wise, he needs more power to cap the reactivity. Okay. So how do you say? They use the technology on people, so it's nothing. It's not like a taser where you're like tasing your dog and they're like on the ground paralyzed.
Yeah.
Momentary. Let me think here. You get off leash control. So if they get off leash, no big deal. You still have a means of getting them to come back or stopping something. When it comes to resource guarding, you can address it in a very non-confrontational manner. We can teach, like, let's say you drop a piece of food on the floor and they both go for it. You can teach them to ignore all food on the ground as a default rule. And there's, how do you say, there's no need for like yanking and pulling and all that stuff because everything's at the press of a button. It's for me, like we have a dog here right now who's blind and has really bad anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And he's on a prong collar and we have to correct him so many times a day by yanking him because he's constantly licking the kennel and salivating.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, man, if they would just do e-collar, it would actually be so much gentler on the dog. Because we're not yanking them 20 times out the day. It's just press a button and then just calm them down. His video is actually on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And you see me correcting him with the prong collar and he's like, he keeps yelping.
Yeah.
But, so it's just the electric part that people have a hard time understanding.
Yeah. That's like where my, and that's why I wanted to schedule the consultation because I've always been very adverse to using an e-collar.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I would never like get rid of Audrey, but I would like to not worry about her being in the same room with my child also.
Correct. So the reason why these tools are effective is, and you've seen the examples of, dogs are physical animals. If there's a disagreement, they bite each other.
Right.
Right. The e-collar is what we call a bite on a button. Right. So like, let's say Jameson has something, and then Audrey goes to like challenge him over it. The moment you see her starting to walk over, boom, I can stop it. And you don't even have to, you don't have to be punishing to stop the behavior. Because that's the other thing, is that people, when we work with the reactivity or aggression, they think, oh, you're going to come in and just like jack the dog all over the place. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. We start with structure first through obedience. And I don't care about the obedience. I care about the discipline behind the obedience. Okay. So like, I was raised old school. I was spanked, and if I didn't get good grades, if I didn't clean my room, if I didn't do my chores, it was spank for everything.
Yeah.
Right. The change of behavior. So it hurt, but the intention was not to hurt me.
Yeah.
It was to teach a lesson.
Right. No, right. I was always threatened with the spank and never had to, because the fear of the hairbrush was enough to
deter you.
Yeah.
Correct. And so in your case, that's what was appropriate to you. Right. And just because Audrey has has this reactivity and stuff doesn't mean she might get full blown, like, 90 on the e-collar. She could be super sensitive, and we don't even need to do that. Right. But you do have to be prepared to do that if needed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah. Because what makes me an effective trainer is I will do what I need to do to stop the behavior, but will the owner do it? Because then the dog learns, well, when Jesse's here, yeah, he goes. He makes sure to get it done. But when Jesse's gone, you only go half that way. So I know I'm going to get away with more stuff with you than I would with Jesse.
Okay.
So, and by all means, feel free to go to my YouTube channel and review the training videos.
Yeah.
The ones that you really want to watch are lesson ones.
Lesson one.
Because the owner doesn't know what they're doing. The dog doesn't know what's happening. It's completely blank slate, no introduction to e-collar. Here you go. Okay.
Okay.
And Mac is definitely a good one to watch, because he's just like Audrey in terms of the behaviors that you're dealing with.
Okay.
Okay. And all the reviews that you read on me, all of them, except for maybe 2 or 3, are all dogs that were trained on an e-collar.
Okay.
Okay. Ever since I started my business here and I came back from my internship from Miami, it's been every dog's on an e-collar.
Okay.
Okay. Because it's the most effective tool. A lot of trainers that treat it as a last resort, or will say like, don't do that, it'll make the problem worse. It's because they don't know how to use it correctly. Okay. A lot of trainers will say you have to do food, and then you do prong collar, then you do e-collar. That's so they make more money. Okay. I tell people, don't even waste your money on that stuff. Just jump straight to it. Because I've had dogs not be trained for 8 years, like yours, 5 years, 12 years, and I still get the same level of control as if I worked with a dog that had previous training. Okay. Training a dog is super simple. Behaviors are simple to address. The difficulty that we're going to have is just with Audrey's intensity. Okay. Because e-collar isn't aversive. It's meant to stop things, but it can also teach things. So like if she's barking out the window, you have a way of biting her to say, I don't want you to bark out the window.
Yeah.
Right? And I will give you other methods of correction so you don't become solely dependent on the e-collar within the home, but expect when you're outside the home that you will be using the e-collar. Okay. And in your case, we'd most likely pair it with a prong collar, because you're going to, have a baby, and you don't want to turn around the corner and get surprised by a dog, and then your dogs just respond, and you're with your baby in a stroller, and your dogs are pulling you over here, right? So the prong collar would be like the secondary fallback of, crap, I need control now because this just happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're perfectly safe to use together. Like the e-collar is not going to interact with the prong and then electrocute the dog.
Hey, Mama. Yeah, that's what we're, yeah.
Okay.
One of them starts barking at the window, and then the other one has to go. Even if there's nobody there, it doesn't matter. Got to go see what's going on.
Yeah, and that's just standard, dog territorial behavior. Yeah. It can be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to be willing to go to uncomfortable measures if needed, and I mean uncomfortable emotionally.
That's what you.
Yeah.
Me is like the possibility of like hurting.
Yeah, but always. So what helps a lot of my clients is I tell them dogs bite each other.
Yeah.
Right. You could max out the collar and slam them. It will never match the damage of a dog bite. Okay.
Yeah. He's gotten pretty bad before.
Yeah. So let me think here. Questions.
How early would we begin if we were gonna start a program?
Maria would know that. Currently, we're doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we've been meeting with clients at Oz Park. Okay. The reason why we're not doing home to home right now is most of my time is here at the facility because I'm not making the money I'm supposed to make because people are working from home and not traveling, right? So I have to save money, and I'm essentially free work. So we're gradually opening up the days, but meeting at Oz Park allows me to work with 8 to 9 people within a 10-hour time frame, whereas before 8 clients in a day took me 13 hours because I was driving all over the place.
Yeah.
Right. Also, what we like about Oz is it's a very realistic environment. There's people, dogs, strollers.
Everything. Yep.
Yes. And, if we're concerned about reactivity and just like the day one stuff, we go off into a part of Oz that's a bit quieter. Okay. So it at least reduces some of that anxiety.
Okay.
And another good video for you to watch would actually be Finn. He just started. There's 2 Finns, by the way. It's a German Shepherd looking dog. Okay. But that lady showed up and she was very anxious, very kind of the same, how would you say, thought process that you're going through, right? And I actually worked her because it was slower where we normally work. Okay. But you can see her just with her dog being reactive and me coaching her through it and how she's able to get the control, just to give you a visual. Mm-hmm. Depending on your availability on those days, Maria would know when she could get you in. We do have people already in queue of being booked. If Friday, Saturday, Sunday get booked, then we're going to open up to like Monday. I'm just slowly opening up my schedule so that, I'm able to do more work here and make the most use of my time.
Okay. I have a question. Does it have to be like the same day every time, or like so my husband has a rotating schedule. He works for ComEd. So sometimes he has to work on Fridays, sometimes he has to work on Saturdays or Sundays. Like, is it possible to like if we make that schedule in advance, to switch around days, or how does that work?
It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
However, we might come to a point where I might not see you for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Because our times, our availability just doesn't line up. And that's not a bad thing.
Okay.
Because it gives you more time to practice. Because I get clients that want to do 2-3 sessions a week, and I'll tell them don't do that because you need time to make mistakes and learn what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
Okay. And you could always schedule a Zoom or something in between so that you can still make progress. I always encourage people to email me, and if I can help them progress via email, I'm more than happy to.
Okay.
It just comes down to your understanding and comfort level with using the tool, and as you use it more, you get more confident. And then, it's really common sense stuff. That's why I also like e-collars. It's very common sense, and it's just push a button. that once you understand it, you know, if I can't see you for a couple of weeks, but you still want to continue your progress, you just shoot me an email, and then I'll give you some instructions.
Okay.
I guess the only other question I would have is in line with this whole concept of, you know, sometimes it might be hard for me to catch a date. If, for example, like, you know, I have to take like a last minute day of work, like they, you know, as a result of something, would you recommend it's better for us to not have only one of us present for a lesson, for example, as opposed to just rescheduling? What's preferable? I mean, at a certain point, if we're, you know, at a month between sessions, would it be better if just Julie was there by herself, or go off more?
You know, we're also filming these sessions.
Yeah.
So if you can't make it and you don't want to lose it, you know, skip a week or whatever, you can just watch your own video.
Okay.
You know, so it fills you in on what you lost. The most important classes are the first two. Okay. Those are the most two important classes, okay? So as long as you got those down, everything else is pretty straightforward and just common sense in terms of teaching stuff. I would say the first two, and if we should need to go over reactivity as an isolated session, those are the ones that we don't want to, ideally don't want to not be present for.
Sure.
Everything else is superficial. You know, come when called is superficial, go there and don't move for 2 hours is superficial. What you're really caring about is don't start fights and don't bark at dogs.
Right.
You know, and the other stuff is easy peasy, in my opinion.
Okay.
So when we were talking about the like come when called lesson, it sounded like they needed a really long collar, a really long leash. What kind of distance are we talking about that we would need to go get a leash for, like a retractable 25 foot or something?
30 feet.
30 feet?
Yeah, and you can get them on Amazon. They're like $8-12.
So when we first started with Jameson, he actually broke one of those retractable collars or retractable leashes. We got it from.
It's not a retractable. It's a long leash.
Just a really long one. Okay.
Correct. It looks like a regular leash, but 30 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, retractables are garbage.
Oh yeah, they're total trash.
Yes.
Total trash.
Yeah, we were walking in the park and it just snapped off. But luckily, he still listened to us at that point still. So he ran around for a little bit, but then we were able to get him back to us. So.
A very common question that I get is, when does the e-collar go away? And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. So let's say when you go on walks, they'd have their collars on. If they're going to be off leash ever, they have their collars on. Maybe like when your baby grows up and friends are coming over and they're just kind of too hype around the kids, you put it on, right? But if they're great dogs otherwise, then you don't need them, okay? And this has nothing to do with the training methods or my skills as a trainer or anything like that. Regardless if you do food training or e-collar training, it's the same thing in both approaches. If you don't have food, dogs don't listen as well, right? The only difference is food sometimes just doesn't work, period. Like you mentioned with the reactivity.
Yeah.
Right? So do you guys drive?
Yeah.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yeah.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
Why?
Because no one else does.
Right? Because you can get away with it. Right? There's no cop who's going to give you a ticket. It's the same thing for dogs. So think of that e-collar as a cop on a collar. Okay? When it's present, they know we can't pull any shit. We have to listen, blah, 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 blah. Right? So it's nothing bad. Like, I think it's so funny when we talk about dog training, like, and this is with hundreds, thousands of people now in my career, we're like, well, Jesse, once a dog learns something, they should just do it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Humans don't even do that. You know, in terms of behavior.
Yeah.
You know, because we're opportunistic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that you're always having to use the e-collar.
Right.
I'm just saying it's present and your dogs are going to behave better.
If we need
right?
it.
And you can't account for life. Like, let's say you get really good control over your dogs. And like, wow, let's take them to go off leash now, right? And they're running around off leash. And then some jerk decides to set off a firework and it blows up.
Yeah.
And now your dogs are scared. Because that happens.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a squirrel runs straight across your, you know, in front of your dogs, and they have good prey drive, and they just kick into prey mode, and they go chasing the squirrel or the rabbit. Well, now you have a means of stopping them. You know,
Yeah.
so I tell people, train for the day you hope never comes. You know, I think they just get this impression of they're constantly having to use it. I'm like, no, if you've done your homework, you don't have to always use it, but it's there because your dogs behave better, they listen better, and should things go south, you have a means of getting them back under control. Okay. The worst case scenario, and this isn't your case, this is when I deal with my really aggressive dogs. I'll tell them if this dog is ever near a person or another dog, they are absolutely always e-collared. Absolutely. Because you don't want to risk them biting a person or something like that, you know? Your case is pretty standard, you know, and we could talk about, like, I know you've had good experiences with kids, and like correcting like Audrey for like pulling at their pants and stuff is very simple and easy with the e-collar.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to punish her to make her scared of the kids, but you're trying to tell her, like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. But we would cover that stuff as well, because it's a very simple concept. When you don't like something, you simply use an aversive to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Questions?
What kind of like handheld remote, like how big is this thing? Because if we're gonna carry 2 around, 1 for each dog, like.
Oh, well, the 2-dog system is 1 for 2 dogs.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, a lot of people or families, they'll start off with the 1 remote for 2 dogs, right? But then as they get comfortable, or if one person decides to take 1 dog, then you can always order a special remote that pairs to your system, so you each have your own.
Okay.
Okay. So you both have control over both dogs. So if one takes 1 dog and the other takes the other dog, no big deal. Okay. You know, if that's something you're potentially interested in, I'd recommend talking to the company first to see if they have any in stock. You know, because if it wasn't for Audrey and her intensity, I would say you'd be fine with the lesser power collar. I like to err on the side of caution, and I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it type of deal.
Yeah.
But I definitely would suggest that that's something you're thinking about, kind of being a step ahead and contacting them. And if they're like, yeah, we got a big supply of extra remotes, then I'm like, okay, cool. We can always get these a few months down the line if needed.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions?
Let's say we go through the 9 weeks, and then like when the baby comes, we're just kind of having some struggles. Can we just book like individual sessions and stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah.
This is like the pressure to kind of like help with that, because like it's, you know, unknown territory, especially like as the kid is going to get bigger too.
Sure. And I don't mind, like, let's say, you know, you do 9, so you technically have 11 hours with me with the Zoom sessions. And maybe you, within 8 classes, you're like really happy with everything you have, and you've used up your Zoom, so you technically have 1 class left.
Okay.
And you say, can we save it? I go, yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
You know, in the training form, it'll tell you the classes expire. Okay?
Yeah.
They expire because we get people who cancel. It's rare, but they'll cancel like every other class.
Okay.
And then like they'll like fall off the map and disappear for 4 weeks, and then be like, oh, I'm ready to start training again. It's really geared towards stopping that crap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If someone's like, hey, Jesse, I'm really happy with what I got, and I'd like to save this class, I have no problem with it.
Okay.
Because now they're just telling us, like, yeah, sure, we'll put that on our notes. Let me know when you're ready for your class.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm good.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. So I'm going to contact Maria. She'll get in contact with you.
Okay.
She'll reiterate the pricing. She'll send you the make and model that we suggest. I'm going to give you 2 options for the e-collar model. Okay. And then just be aware that 1 was discontinued, so they're becoming more scarce.
Okay.
And you know, feel free to go to my YouTube channel and stalk my videos. That's what they're there for. And if you have any other questions, you know, you just let us know, and then we'll get back to you.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for understanding. I'm sorry for being 20 minutes late.
That's okay. It actually worked out because I couldn't get him up here, so it worked out.
Sure. Okay, awesome. And then also, just before I go, you do get your credit for this consult towards your program, so that knocks off at least $135.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Take
Have a
care.
great night.
Thanks.